don't make your job who you are. Just make sure you keep it what you do. And because if you define yourself by your work, well, it's not always going to hug you back. There's ups and downs and loss and price increase and struggle to find employees, all that stuff.
Starting or growing your business is hard work. But now you are listening to the Better Business Podcast with me, Steve Cook, and I'm going to try and make it a little easier on you. We on this podcast help you grow a better business with real advice from professionals, and today is no different. Boom, hello, and welcome to another episode, a newly renovated episode of what was Chatter with Steve is now what I'm going to call Better Business Podcast. For my test dummy is my dumbest friend, DJ David John Boles II. DJ, introduce yourself as my closest friend.
I'm DJ Boles, and yeah, I'm Steve's closest friend. Grew up together, lived together in college, and I worked for Cook Feed for a while, to be honest.
DJ was at one time an employee of the Cook Empire. So besides working out the kinks in the new platform edition, I also wanted to have you on as an expert in something that I honestly have no expertise in, and that is having the courage to start a new business. I think it's something that is probably one of the hardest parts in starting a new business, and I feel somewhat remiss that I have never had that opportunity of starting from absolutely zero. And I think that that's probably one of the hardest parts about it. And so what we want to talk about today is that person that is either thinking about starting a business, or B, maybe they've just started a business, and things that maybe you could like forecast in the next 2, 3, 4 months that they're going to run into that, they didn't even think of, that, maybe you could save somebody some major steps. So, as far as starting a business, walk me through, obviously I know your story being as close as we are, but kind of walk me through, for people that are listening, what your experience was leading up to the class that you kind of started kicking around the idea of running a business with.
So, originally, I've always wanted to open my own business. So the idea was always there. It was just, I didn't know when and I didn't know what. And, I worked closely with I worked with a lot of people, and I'd always mentioned that I wanted to own a business one day. And luckily, all my bosses, including your dad, they kind of showed me the ropes and how they ran their business. So I kind of had a little insight of what it took. But like you said earlier, none of that had to deal with starting it from the beginning. It just was kind of like how they ran their business, pretty much. But what was your question?
Well, walk me through, like, leading up to that, like the idea, like kind of where you're going. Walk me through the idea of when you got the idea, and what made you choose, like, hey, I want to open a popcorn shop. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that was all from the paper. So the assignment was to find a niche in the market in Stillwater, because I was going to Oklahoma State at the time. And so anyways, he said, hey, make a business plan about a business that's not in Stillwater. So we were looking for vacuums to fill, pretty much. And one thing that wasn't in Stillwater was a popcorn store. And, my dad, he sells to concession stands for his living, to baseball parks, movie theaters, etc. So he kind of had an idea of what a popcorn store was. I did not. And so I just started writing this paper, and which is kind of what it was at the time, was just popcorn store would be a pretty neat thing. So I wrote it, and the more and more I studied to write my paper, there was an actual vacuum. I did not know that there wasn't many popcorn stores. And at this time, I was unaware of any in Oklahoma. Come to find out, there were some. and that just kept creeping in on my my motivation to do so, because it was something that wasn't out there already, you know. So I was looking at it from a competitive point of view, like, wow, there's no one doing this. So if I can make a good product, and run a good business, then you know there's some big opportunity. It's not like I was trying to start a local grocery store, you know.
How long did you sit on the idea before you actually like was like I'm going to do this?
So, uh, I wrote the paper my whole fall semester, my senior year, and it was pretty much like I'm gonna go for this during Christmas break, and then
So let me ask you this. Like I think that that's almost easier for someone that's like let's say someone like is working in a job right now and they're like I've always wanted to start this business, or like you, like I wrote this paper, I think it would be a good business, I've always wanted to start that business. With me, and I know like some others that I know, they're consistently thinking of like, oh, this would be a good business, this would be a good business, but never like committing to one, new thing. Do you think that there's a part of you that did you ever want to start something different than what you did, or were you always just like, this is the only one I can see? I know now you think that, but back in the day, was there any, were you ever like, maybe I should start something different?
here's the difference: ignorance is bliss in this situation. So y'all know what it takes to run a business. You know what all goes in, and you know the risk, and you're well aware of the risk because you've experienced that most likely. And you having a business, you're like, do I really want to give up this good thing going and start over for potentially better, but also potentially not better? So that's
But at the time, you're saying you're in college, so you had
oh,
no,
no, oh no.
there was no other option,
Uh,
so it didn't really matter.
well, that's what I tell people all the time is like, my greatest strength is also my greatest weakness, because I have a lot of self confidence. You know, like I had enough to think it would work, and I had enough to not think about it not working. You know, but that was
Yeah.
based off of no facts or studying. It was just like I thought this could work, and I was going to do it. Um, yeah, of course. Like I at the time, I didn't. Like I said, like it was a it happened so fast. I didn't have time to think of, oh, could I do another business? The thing that sparked me to do this right out of college was the idea of the popcorn store.
Do you think that, as far as like starting that, did you ever have any other aspirations of starting something different, or was it always at the time? Was it always the popcorn,
Well, to be honest, oh,
or was it between popcorn or get a job?
it was. Well, I have a text from an employee. One second, one second. Okay, all right. So, let me turn this phone on silent.
Or don't? I mean,
Well, I sent it. You know, I'm newlywed, so I said call Mary. She can she can handle it.
call Mary.
Okay, what was the question? I'm sorry about that.
So, as far as your decision to do the popcorn, was it always, did you ever have any doubts of, I want to do something else? Or was it always between, maybe I should get a job with a company or the popcorn deal?
Well,
What was the,
well, I had my mind wrapped around the whole starting the popcorn business so quick that I couldn't think of what else I could do. I didn't know where I would apply. I had no,
because you had a time crunch with graduation?
yeah, so it was one of those things where I had no idea what I was going to do. I wrote the business plan, and then I immediately said, well, you know, I think I'm going to try this. And then once I got that loan, I was like, I have no idea what I'm gonna like. If this wasn't doing, I couldn't tell you what I'd do. You know, my original plan was to go into outside sales. I thought it'd be cool to be a traveling salesman. Selling what? No idea. But that was my thinking, was I was going to go into outside sales and start a business later on in life. And this happened, and no, I didn't have any second thoughts or a backup plan or nothing.
Yeah. So let's talk about like actually getting started. how did you find there's, how to get a loan, how to start an LLC, how to sign a lease on a building, how to, sign up for sales taxes and employee taxes. There's like all this stuff. And did you truly just like, go around asking people, or did you do research, or what was your number one thing that you probably relied on the most?
People that I knew and trusted that own their businesses. I mean, your parents are one. They helped out with a lot of what you just said, literally. And I was in college when we were doing a lot of this, so I'd be on the phone with my dad, like, because he knows all the people I do, and he was helping me set up a lot of that stuff while I was gone, and I'd come down to sign paperwork and stuff like that, and look at some buildings. But no, literally, I didn't know anything, and I paid attention in school, but the classes that I were in, I was a business management degree. It really didn't focus on the small business aspect of things. So it was more of like being a CEO of a company down the line when you're like 60,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so I was very ignorant to everything. I didn't know anything, but a lot of it was just asking people what I needed. That was the kind of checklist. Then your city will let you know the rest.
Yeah. They'll tell you how to get money to them.
Yeah.
So let's say you had to go back or let's say that somebody is sitting there and you can do it all over again for them. And you had 10 times more money. You had 10 times more budget than you had when you started. What would you spend all that on?
I would spend most of it on a lot of self promotion. It'd have been nice to start off with a lot more branded things. I would have started off with flooring my kitchen a little different. You've been in there, but no, like
The layout or the
the layout.
the layout?
Just like the flow of things. Like there's only a certain amount of things I can move around now. Now that the building is the way it is. Um,
Right.
I would have definitely moved it
How
around.
could you have done that differently? Do you think like not spending as much money on like the initial construction until you got figured out what you needed? Or I mean, is there a way around that?
Well, it's just like experience. That's the thing. Like in Edmond, was the second store, I laid it out a little bit more like I liked it, but I honestly didn't know the flow of the business, because I'd never done it
Yeah,
before. So I was just like, yeah, these will go here, these will go here. But if I could,
this is fine.
yeah, if I could change, and I could change it, but it's one of those things where it's not worth the shutdown time, really. Um,
Yeah,
and
it's expensive.
it's expensive because it would have to be moving water, cutting up concrete on the floor, all this other stuff, Because if it was just simply dropping new outlets in places, that would be easy. But I'd have to move all sorts of stuff. But I would do that. And then I'd also, like, I built the front of the store, myself because I didn't have a lot of money. I would have definitely, I like the look of it, but I would have definitely rathered someone design it and put it together to make it look a lot more professional.
Are you glad that you did it like more on a shoestring budget like you did though? Like, do you think that that could have strapped you financially if you would have spent quite a bit more money?
Absolutely. And it was one of those things where I don't think I started the trend, but I did the pallet wall. Remember that in 2016,
Yeah.
dude? And right after that, I mean, there's pallet walls kind of everywhere. So it kind of worked out because a lot of people were talking about the pallet wall. Something that I did on a budget just because I knew how to do it. And that was like a big thing. And what's cool is because I wrote the paper in college and I built the inside by myself, that was like a selling point. People loved that. So I think it initially really, really helped me, because people to this day, today, 5 years later, I had someone come in and go, I read a article about you. Did you write this as a paper? I was like, yeah. And, they asked
Yeah.
what I built in there. Like, so that's, it's, one of those things that like something sometimes just because it's not the way you want it, it might be better for you.
So let's say somebody had the courage to start a new business, or they started it, but they're still in their infancy stages. What's something that really surprised you, or something that you believe now that maybe other people don't believe, or maybe it was contrary to what most people told you, say in college or whatever, that I thought this, but it's actually, this is the way it is. Whether it's cash flow or whether it's employees or whatever it might be, if somebody's started a business, but they've only been going for like 2 months, 3 months, something like that. What's something that, hey, I thought this was the way it is, but you're about to get blindsided, this much farther down the road? What's something that you could give some advice for?
Um, my advice so would be kind of how you spend your time. Um, you know, for the first 2 years, I spent every day in the business, doing that, and uh, that's all I was doing is in the business, trying to make it better, doing this, and then I kind of had a life check, and when I stepped back and started doing other things and not making the business the priority of my life, it was actually easier to work on and started growing, and I started enjoying it a little bit more. So I think when people start off, it's like, hey, you have to work all the time, and you do. I mean, you do. But what I'm saying is have a deadline. Have a well, when I get to this, I need to start, doing other things like find some philanthropy to do or some benevolence or, an hobby or something like that. And to be honest, because stepping out of there, you get to talk to more people. You might get more ideas. You're in the business so long, you don't get to see what other people are doing, kind of thing. And I think getting out, it kind of opens your eyes to what other people are doing, what's working. You also, you know, if you don't have everything all the time, you kind of crave it. And but when work's the most, the only thing on your mind all the time, one, it's hard to even appreciate your hard work, and then two, it's hard to enjoy selling that product, and to come out with new things and new ideas. Because when I get stagnant, I come up with a new way to market because it's exciting to me, and I have to think, and then I try to come out with a new product because it's something else to sell. Um, but the biggest thing is like uh, you when you start a business, you're going to have to be in there all the time, but you need to find ways to not be in there all the time as soon as possible. And that doesn't mean you're not working. What it means is you're open for new ideas. If you're just in there all the time, for a while, it took a while for me to not listen to anybody else's ideas, because I was in there just kind of
It's
ignorant to
hard to
what.
work on your business when you're working in your business.
Exactly. And I know people told me that right when starting out, and I was like, listen, I can't find anyone to work. I barely know what I'm doing, and when something breaks, I have to fix it. And I can't leave. I cannot leave. And when I opened that second location, it forced me to at least leave a store, which gave me confidence in, whoa,
Like,
crap.
oh, I can leave this store, so that means I can leave the other store too.
Exactly. And then getting out there and talking to people is nice. And I, I've been a part of like those networking groups before and stuff like that. I'm not necessarily preaching that. I'm mainly kind of preaching go be around the people you want to be like. Go take them to lunch, do this and that. Go to places you like to shop and see what they do. I've learned a lot from that side of things, and it doesn't have to be in the same field. You and me, we talk business all the time, and the difference of our product never even comes up because we all have the same
Yeah,
problems. You know.
right. Do you think that, I remember you going to a lot of that stuff to begin with, networking stuff and the chambers and all that stuff. Do you think that I just noticed that you don't go to it as much. We haven't actually talked about this, but do you think that maybe wasn't a waste of time, but your time is better spent doing other things, strictly for a business, in a business context?
Yeah, I mean, well, you have to be selfish with your money, when it comes to business. You know, like what you do with it has to have a return. That's what businesses are. You know, it's not your own.
Right.
It's not your own money where you can just go do whatever you want with it. You know, when we spend money from the business, I want it to be somehow profitable in the end. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
and with I mean, I don't want to make this a diss session about chambers or networking groups, but from my experiences, like it's a lot of the same people, and you know, everyone in there is trying to be selfish. You know what I mean? Like, I mean that's the point.
Right.
Like you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, kind of thing. Where I didn't really like that because I didn't want people to feel like they had to use my business because I was a part of this certain group. I know that sounds silly because it sounds like a great idea, but I like people like good repetitive business is made from relationships and product, you know, um,
It's
and
just hard to establish a relationship on a guilt
on
trip or
on a
or
foolish,
whatever.
yeah, exactly. And so getting out there, like I got a lot of business doing some stuff with the children's hospital, you know, and that was good. There's good causes, but people, you know, we were out there both being, you know, unselfish and trying to help a good cause, and then we found that in common, developed a relationship, business, you know, um,
Right.
things like that. That's the way I like it, or just meeting other business people, you know, just going out there, knowing that it's more authentic and real. I think has always made better relationships. And what's cool about that is, you know, when they come in there, they want to support your business instead of just ask for something because they know you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I found was, you know, getting out there and developing more authentic relationships with, you know, fellow business people.
What's something that you either heard from others about starting a business or something that you thought to be true that you completely disagree with
Can you say that again? I had
now?
some headphone problems.
Are you good now?
Yeah.
What's something that you either heard that you now disagree with, or something that people tell you, or whatever it might be, that you completely disagree with now about starting a business, or something that you've changed your mind on?
Well, I mean, I disagreed with everyone that told me about how hard it was and also was going to be starting a business in the beginning. And now I believe.
Did a lot of people tell you that?
Oh yeah, it was so negative. Um, not only
A lot of people were against, like, that. I figured you'd get a lot of, oh yeah, good luck, man. But but a lot of people said,
well,
"What are you doing?"
the people that didn't know what it was taking a business was like a popcorn store, and then the others were like, okay, you know. And then there's those people that have always cheered for me and that said you can do anything, you know. But then the business
Yeah.
people were like, good luck, and I was like, oh crap, that doesn't make me too excited about what's next.
Huh.
And they're like, it sucks, blah blah. And then I found out why. And but I think a lot of, I don't know, that self lack of, or false confidence I had in myself really kind of pushed me through all that. But talking about, trying to think what I would disagree with. I'm pretty good about completely forgetting things I don't have to remember.
It's that lack of, or that false confidence you have.
Yeah, like,
Or we keep saying false confidence. I mean, I guess that would be an insult if I said false
well,
confidence. You have a
no, I
good
mean,
confidence.
well, it was good confidence, but in the beginning it was false because I had nothing to base it on. You know,
Yeah.
I had no idea how to run a business. I had no, you know, but that's why I tell people, I was like, it was false confidence, but it worked. You know, kind of like, you know, if you dress like a job you want, you know, kind of just
Yeah.
that self belief will get you there. Um,
Yeah.
Now that's not all you need, of course,
Yeah.
but it helps. Because I mean, a lot of people, I don't know, I just didn't really listen. It didn't take no thought from anyone that didn't think I could do it. Luckily, I surround myself with a lot of people that just kind of motivated me, and the ones that were worried told me what they were worried about, but no one's like, you're an idiot, you know. And if they did, I forgot about them. So
Bye, haters. Uh, okay, so if somebody asked you right now, in the infancy stage, maybe they haven't even started their business, or maybe they're, 1 month in, 2 months in, say it's a restaurant, say it's a, small clothing store or an online store or something like that. But either they haven't started it yet or they're in their infancy. What's something that every small business owner should either stop doing right now or start doing right now?
they need to start marketing. I mean, I didn't really get into marketing till later. There's a quote I love. It's if you're a business owner, you're a marketing business that sells said product. So, I technically own a marketing business that markets popcorn. That's how I have to look at it, or it ain't gonna sell. Um, your product, and then also your product should be the second most thing you focus on. And this is what I've been preaching to a lot of my employees lately, is
Meaning what?
customer
What's first?
customer service. Um, I think that if my customer service is better than my product, I have a higher chance of getting that customer back every time. Um, so say you go to a restaurant, it's the best food you ever had. They treat you like crap. You're going to leave there mainly focusing on that customer service. If there's a place that's mediocre, you love the people, you're going to go there most of the time. And if the product is awful and they're nice, well, you're probably not going to talk bad about them.
Yeah, that's
so,
true.
what I'm saying is, like, I believe our product's good. Will everyone like it? No. But one thing we do have control over is everyone enjoying them coming in there. You know what I mean? So not everyone's going to like popcorn. Not everyone's going to like all of our flavors. But if they come in there and they have a good experience, they're going to tell people about it. And that's what we can control. And, if I am working my tail off trying to get people into our business and then they don't get treated right, then it's a waste of my time and the people I'm paying. So I think, of course, you have to have a good product, but your main focus needs to be on your customer service once you have that product. Of course, if you don't have a product and you're working in customer service, then that's pointless. But so that's kind of what I've been preaching a lot lately. And I'm not saying I'm not spending time on the product I'm selling. It's just what's a good product if you don't have good people on there icing on top.
Well, plus a lot of people have different tastes and
Yeah, exactly.
especially as it relates to food. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But customer service is pretty non-negotiable. I mean, I guess people could have difference of opinion of, that is nice and that's not, but
Yeah, you're not going to please everyone, that's for sure. Oh,
especially
hey,
with however many different flavors of popcorn. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
and that's another thing that people are going to get a little gun shy of. You're not going to please everyone, and you need to accept that, because I remember in the
Yeah.
beginning when someone wouldn't like a flavor, I would lose my mind because I was like, why, blah, blah, and then, look at the sales, and well, 900 people like this flavor. I'm not going to change it for one.
Well, it's similar to what you were talking about earlier with, having the ability to leave a store and knowing that it's not going to completely fall apart. And it might, but it's never going to be as bad as first thought, or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
might be. I think that's kind of goes along with that same deal that some people might hate it, but 900 people might like it. You have
Mm-hmm.
to be okay. If you put yourself out there, you have to be okay with a little bit of, scrutiny, whether it's a flavor or customer service or, an employee was rude while you were gone or whatever it
Exactly.
might be.
Yeah.
The more you put yourself out there, the more you're going to have insults too.
Oh yeah, and they'll come, and that's the other thing about if you really, really train your employees on customer service, it's more comforting when the issue arises because you you'll be able to have your employees' backs, because
Yeah.
that's
You're
your
saying like a trust.
yeah. So if someone says this person treated me like this, uh, I really want to be on my team's side, you know And when I call them, I get their side of the story, and most of the time it wasn't them, and that's what I want. And I'm not saying like, the customers are always right kind of deal. Like, if there was a real issue, I want to fix it, but I don't want it to be because of an employee. I want it, because that's things I can control. If someone doesn't like the popcorn, a kernel got stuck in their tooth, happened to be burnt, or something like that, those are things that we can fix. But a bad experience due to how they're treated, we can't fix that. you know. So I want to be able to rely on those people that are going to handle situations all right.
Speaking of talking about employees and like trusting them and stuff like that, I got to get the exact statistic because it's mind blowing. I need to look it up and just make sure I'm right on this. But I believe the statistic is 94% of all businesses in the United States are actually that do less than 1 million in sales. So 94% actually do less than a million in sales, which is like almost all of them, which is crazy, because you hear about these deca million, dollar businesses. Um, so I would assume if a business is doing less than a million, that the majority of businesses have, very small staffs, whether it's 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever. And I actually know a ton of businesses, especially in the feed industry and stuff like that, that will have, 1 or 2 or 3. They might have hired a few people, but they actually like shut down when they go on, say, vacation or whatever it might be. And I know like we both do, I think you like, ebb and flow going back and forth on this, just like I do. There's times where, you are the opener and the closer and all that. But what would you say to somebody that I feel like that's such a chasm to get over that I'm just not going to hire people anymore because I'm just going to do it myself. Like I feel like that is probably 94% of people would say that, because they've tried to hire, they've tried to hire. And I know that you've gone back and forth, with that, but what would you say to somebody that does that, seeing the other side? I know you've seen the other side of it before. Is it worth it? Is it not? I mean, where do you stand on that?
I guess it's depending on your point of having a business. Is it all about how much you get, or is it about the time benefits? You know, I'm in the business because I thought it would be easier to control my time. To do things I need to do outside of it. Whether it's you know um, my Christian duties, family duties, things like that. I never wanted to be restricted by that, and that's a little ironic because that's exactly what a business can do. Um, but but if you run it correctly and you get those employees, and that's the hard part is when you don't have employees. If you want to keep it running, you got to do that. But that's where I would be on the different side. Is like I'll never throw my hands up and go, I'll just do it myself, um, because that's the opposite of the reason why I got into business. So people that want to do that, I know people that do that, and maybe their motivations are different than mine, but mine was to, I you're never in control of anything, of course, but I could have somewhat control over my work time, the money we make, and uh, my time for things I need to do. And when I have employees, I can work hard freely, and if it's Sailor's birthday, I can go. You know, or sometimes I'll be on my way to Sailor's birthday party and have to go back to work.
Yeah.
That's the cool part of it.
You
But
think it all just comes down to your ambition
it, it,
or what you want to do with your business?
exactly. So if my goal was to just become as rich as possible, I would have the least amount of employees and I'd work all the time. But my goal is to have a good running business that I don't need to be there, that I want to continue to grow. But if I have kids and they're in football and it's the middle of the day, I get to go watch it. You know, I'm also in control that I'll never be open on Sundays. You know, I'll always get to go to church on Wednesday nights, stuff like that. That's the things that motivate me. And and for that I need employees. Um, I'm not in control of getting them, but I don't know, it sounds weird, but I should be, but it's not the way it works right now. And um, so yeah, and then the people that you're talking about that say throw their hands up and they end up running it themselves. I've never met a happy one. They're
Yeah.
usually quite frustrated, and that's what I meant earlier with your time is like, don't make your job who you are. Just make sure you keep it what you do, and because if you define yourself by your work, well, it's not always going to hug you back. There's ups and downs and loss and price increase and struggle to find employees, all that stuff. So
I think it's just tough for some people because they will basically go and have a bad experience with an employee and they throw their hands up and say, I don't want to jack with that anymore. It's easier if I just do it myself.
mhm.
Well, you're just choosing your hard. You're going to have, that's what I've come to the conclusion of is it's going to be hard to be the guy that opens every day and closes every day and not be able to call anyone, and you can never take a day off even if you're sick because you're the only person that works in there. That's hard. It's also hard when someone calls in and it catches you unexpectedly and you just spent 3 months training them or whatever it might be. That's also hard. I'm not saying that's not hard, but it's going to be hard either way.
Yeah,
You're just choosing your hard. And a lot of times I think it's that predictability. It's hard when an employee quits because it's very unpredictable. You didn't know that was coming. Um, but that might be something. There's probably other ways around that. And, as far as, saving up money to have a backup, and being able to pay backup people and all that. But I think, it's exactly what agree with you 100% is that you're just choosing why did you open the business? If it was just, I just don't want to have a boss, well then fine, run it yourself, but if your goal was, and I think that's most people's goal is to, I want to make more money or, you know, have a level of freedom that I can, do what I want when I want, and that type of stuff. But then they get sucked into it 3 months later, because 3 employees quit. They're like, man, screw this employee thing. I think that you're just choosing your difficulties, in a way that you're going to open and close the store every day, whatever that might be, or run it yourself or whatever.
yeah, and I've been there. I'm sure you've been there where you said, "Forget this, I'm going to do it myself," for a while. You know,
So many times.
and
Yeah.
I've done that, but I did it to where I was like, "I'm going to do this until I figure out I'm going to work this, and then hopefully while doing it, I can figure out the type of employee I need to find next." So doing the hands-on, that's helped me a lot. It's like, oh, I had this type of person doing this job. I need this type of person.
Right.
And so that kind of helped a lot when I figured that out on a couple of positions. Like doing it for a while, you're like, oh, well, that's why it didn't work out. I had the wrong type of person back here.
Yeah. You get better as a trainer too, I
Hmm.
think, or you get better as a hiring person. Like you're saying, you know who to look for more, whether it's, you needed a person that was lower or you needed, I found that before, like, oh, I need like an assistant manager. I was just trying to get like a warehouse person and promote, I didn't realize like you can actually look for an assistant manager.
Yeah.
I didn't, there's stuff like that you hire better and you sometimes train better too. I found myself,
Yo, yeah.
putting too much on people too soon or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And that's what's been cool. Like, and that's what I struggled with was having sympathy for people to learn in the beginning. Because I started like I had to learn it all by myself. So when people struggle, I was like, listen, no one taught me, and it took me a while to like kind of get over that. But that yeah, I mean, the more you do, the easier it is to understand the employee, like that undercover boss thing. Like I do that every day. Like I work in the store every day, so it's not like I don't know what people are going through, and that's what it's kind of hard to relate to employees sometimes. I don't know why, but sometimes business owners get immediately thrown into some sort of dictator appearance, where in fact we're employers that started a small business trying to do stuff, we made a something that, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but we made something that provides more jobs. People come in there to work, get money, and that's what we're trying to do is just try to make the business the best it can, and we need employees,
Yeah.
and and that's what I always tell a lot of my employees is like, yeah, you're doing this even though I'm here because that's why you're here.
Yeah.
If you weren't here, of course I'd do it, but you're here, so you're getting paid and stuff like that. But I still go to the stores early and do a lot of cooking and doing all that stuff. So I'm definitely doing a lot of employee work still. 5 years in, and I don't mind. But it'd be nicer if I could have a full staff all the time where I could literally focus on growing that business marketing wise. And so I can't imagine saying forget it and just doing it myself because I think the business would be stagnant until I change my mind.
Yeah.
I don't see it growing if I decided I'm just going to do it all.
Yeah. I think that's a big challenge with saying that. All right, last question. If you had to give one piece of advice to someone who is either feeling plateaued, maybe they're that person that we're talking about that refuses to hire somebody or whatever it might be, or maybe it's somebody that's just starting out, or maybe it's somebody that's like we're talking about, they're wanting to take that step, they want to quit their job, or they want to start that business or whatever it might be, and you had to give them one piece of advice, what would you give?
Well, to the stagnant person, because I can relate to that, is small changes. I mean, um, change your website, change your logo, change the way your store looks, come out with something new. I mean, change makes things exciting. And being a business owner, I've realized that, it's tough, but you have to come up with everything. There's not going to be a new item or a new idea without you. Um, can you rob those from other people? Yeah, that's why I said go hang out with people you look up to. You don't have to literally come up with the idea from nothing. Go talk to people, see what they're doing. So I would sometimes when I get stagnant, I'll change the way the store looks. It makes me excited coming in there because it's unfamiliar. It looks different. I have to kind of second look at everything. I do that all the time. It sounds small, but mentally it's huge. I mean, y'all shift your product around all the time because it does something for the customer too, because they have to look at different things and uh,
Yeah.
it feels like a new experience. If you go in the same thing, we did it with our rooms growing up as kids. That's where I remembered it. You know, I remember being in the store one day thinking like, man. And I remember when I was little, I rearranged my room and I came in a room, felt like I had a brand new room. So, I
Yeah.
changed up my business and it feels like, oh,
It
this is,
changes up your
yeah,
habits and your
exactly.
everything
Yeah,
too,
it feels
the way you
new.
take care of it.
Yeah, it sounds small, but I think mentally it's pretty good. To the person that is just starting their business, good luck. I mean, it's,
Dude, are you the naysayer?
I'm not the naysayer. I'm just saying like it's difficult.
Yeah.
It's you don't really get to enjoy a lot of it until later. I mean, I guess you have to.
Why do you would you ever work for somebody else?
No.
Okay, I said the same thing. So now why? Because everyone says like, "Wolf, good luck, man. It's kind of miserable sometimes." But everyone also says, "Yeah, I could never work for somebody else."
Yeah. Well, what I meant.
Why?
Well, here I'll clarify real quick about starting a business. It's because usually they're extremely. I'm going to use the cliche. They're go-getters. They're used to some form of success. That's why they have the confidence to do it. And right when you open a business, it's it takes a while for it to be considered successful for you. Do you know what I mean?
Financially?
Yeah, yeah. And so like it's tough because you'll question if you did the right thing for a couple years, um, and it's one of those things. Like my advice to someone starting off was don't talk to other people about what they make. Just hey, focus on you, man. Grow that bank account because the first couple years financially are struggle. They are. My paychecks when I started getting them went straight out. Apartment and vehicle,
Yeah.
and that was that. Uh, but focus on you, and it'll work. But I think just the worry about the future and those slow days in the beginning are awful. Where now you can kind of predict them and you're used to them. They'll bounce back. But in the beginning, when people don't go in there for a week, you're just like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm going to be in debt for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Um, and then why I would never work for someone else is uh, it would be. I feel like um, I think one would be easier because I'd only have to. I've thought about that so many times. Like I would love to just go clock in, do my duties, and bounce. When I clock out, it's over. Um, but I think I'm too ambitious. I like owning my own business. I have, I can grow until I don't want to anymore. I can take risk. I can do all that stuff, and then yeah,
I think that's the exact same thing because I've always said like the thing that drives me crazy is I don't want a ceiling.
yeah,
If you work for somebody else, you can see the ceiling unless you're like some sort of partner or whatever, you can see the ceiling.
yeah,
It's the person above you.
yeah,
Whether that's the owner or whether that's just like the guy that's been there 30 years or whatever. That's what drives me crazy is like I can see the ceiling. I'm like, "Oh, well, I know how much he makes or about what he makes or whatever it might be, and I know I can't make more than him because he's my boss." And so I think if the opportunity was right, where there was no ceiling, whether your name is on the business or what not, I'm sure you're kind of like me. If there was a right opportunity where there was no ceiling, I could grow how I wanted to grow and I got to make
yeah,
full autonomy,
yeah,
decisions, it's kind of,
yeah.
but at the end of the day, that's owning a business. So, you know,
Exactly, and mine's the competitive nature of it too. Like if that's it, like, well, like, how am I going to be motivated? And I think there's some people that
yeah,
that's perfect for. It's just not me. I just like, because I mean, you and me talk about like, I'm only 5 years in, and I kind of like, I wonder if I could do another business too.
right.
And it's just like,
Yeah.
and we're like sitting here how crazy busy we are, but I just think that's why like some people are made for it and some aren't, and that doesn't mean you'll be successful. You know what I mean? Like
Do you think it's genetic?
genetic.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has.
Like, do you think some people like your personality, like if you don't have a certain personality, you can't own a business genetically?
Well, I don't know if it's genetic or just situational, like how you're raised and timing, stuff like that. Um, I'm not sure because there's some people that are like, I have no idea. Like, I never want to own a business, and I'd be like, well, I never want to work for anybody, and I don't know. I don't know. That is crazy. I don't know if it's genetic or
I
not.
think it's kind of like athletics. Like there is a certain portion that like you can play on a certain level no matter what. Like I think everyone could own their own business, aka own their own job. Like I think everyone could have a one man shop or a two man shop, or most people.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's selling stuff online or whatever it might be. I think that almost everybody could do that to some capacity. But I think like growing a business like past a certain amount, like the amount that you have or whatever, that you have the ability to stomach a certain amount of criticism or bad things or whatever it might be, I think there's some genetics to that you have the you have the personality to stomach that stuff.
Yeah.
Some people can't do that.
Hey,
So
honestly though, I think owning a business for a couple of years will callous you. I think it's hard to.
yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I think some of it is a learned behavior,
Yeah,
but I think you were predisposed to feel that way to begin with.
Yeah.
You are already in high school, you were that way
Yeah.
of, I don't care what they think, or whatever it might be. So I think that, yes, I think you can grow in that. Just like an Olympic athlete or a professional athlete, they were genetically gifted in a ton of different ways.
Yeah.
However, they also had to grow in what they were already genetically gifted in. That's what I'm saying is I think there's a certain point that, just like me, like the way I see numbers or whatever it might be, like, or my personality or your personality or whatever, there's a certain portion of that you are genetically gifted with. Now you've grown in it a ton, but I do think that some people have, that some people can only grow to a certain amount if they can't stomach like the behind the scenes,
You're correct.
portions. They can never go past one location or, X number of employees or whatever it might be.
Yeah, you're right. So you're saying there's not like a business owner gene, but it's like there's a type of person that can do it.
Yeah, you have to have difficult conversations.
Yeah.
You have to be okay with a certain amount of criticism. You have to be somewhat decent with numbers and budgeting, and you know what I mean? Like there's a certain amount of all those skills that you have to have. Now, somebody could have hardly any of those skills at all, and I'm not saying they can't own a business. I'm just saying I don't think you could have that big of a business if you don't have some of those, things. I think you do have to have a few of those genetics before. Now everybody can grow in everything, of course, but how much you can grow, like, or at least that's how I feel.
Yeah, I understand.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Better Business Podcast with me, your host, Steve Cook. Starting or growing a business is hard work, so I hope that today's advice made it just a little bit easier for you. We'll be sharing more about this exact topic all this week on my social platforms. You can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, or if you would like to get a personalized blog post from me on this topic, you can join my email list, and I will send you an email once a week. You can check the show notes to subscribe to that, or find me on my website, whatever's easier for you. Now get out there and go grow a better business with this advice from today's Real Pros. Thank you for listening.